welcome back to the Constitutionals, the entertainment business news show. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the premier podcast for the website c+comedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. Welcome back in. Here we are. Before we get to the main crux of the episode, I have a very special thing for you. This interview for you. This is an interview, let's just get to it, with the wonderful, the talented Mr. Craig Robinson. You might know him as Daryl from the Office. You might also know him from other projects, like on American Dad, where you can hear his voice. And the movie The Goods. True or false, I brought up the movie The Goods during the interview. True. I think he has a very... people love to use the word iconic. There's a role in that movie that he has that I think is so funny. He said he was also doing that movie. You'll hear it in the interview because it's not that long. It's not my fault. It's no one's fault. It's just what I get from Universal. Yes, Craig Robinson and I sat down to mostly talk about his appearance on the rise and fall of Reggie Dinkins. The only way, and here's I think that show is very funny. It's a very funny show from the minds of Robert Carlock, Sam Means, and Tina Fey. And if you like what their shows have been. Great News, 30 Rock, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. If you like those shows, then you'll pretty much like The Fall and Rise of Reggie Dinkins. But it has a title card that is 5 seconds long, and all it is, the theme song with that title card sings the title of the show, and this is the only way I can remember the title of the show. The Fall and Rise of Reggie Dinkins. I like it. The pilot is very funny. The subsequent episodes are very funny. We have a great conceit as to why Daniel Radcliffe's Oscar award-winning, I believe, filmmaker is making a documentary about a disgraced former football star, Tracy Morgan. I think it's very funny. Daniel Radcliffe did an interview, and I promise I'll introduce Craig Robinson in a second. Daniel Radcliffe did an interview with Seth Meyers this week on Late Night, and he said that before they were about to do a take of a scene, Tracy Morgan just said, "I told Flavor Flav to take off that clock." He said apparently he does that a lot. That's so funny. Anyway, watch The Fall and Rise of Reggie Dinkins. I believe in that episode, Heidi Gardner, yes, I did watch the episode. She appears as Craig Robinson's wife. So go ahead and check that out. Without further ado, this is the interview with the wonderful Craig Robinson. If you want to follow him on social media, go follow him on Instagram at Mr. Craig Robinson. You can also watch a video version of this interview under the interviews on youtube.com/C+comedy. And now, without any more hesitation, the excellent, the great Mr. Craig Robinson returns to the show. That's right. This is the second time. I forgot to mention that. Anyway, here he is, Craig Robinson. Okay, and if you're watching the video, I'm just going to say the words, welcome back. Here we go, baby. Because I don't want to do any more editing. Welcome back in. I've spoken about this on LinkedIn Logs, the Jobs and Business News podcast, and I literally just recorded Late Night Lately, the late night show. If you hear anything, if you hear any stomping, drilling, hammering, whatever, my roof is currently getting worked on. Right now, I don't hear anything. I think like roughly 6 weeks ago, they started at one building, and then they came. So they finished that building. Then they came over to our building, to my building, I guess. It's all in the same complex. They came over my building. And so we knew this is going to be 6 weeks total for the entire property to be upended. They finished. They did the roofing on my building last week, on my side of the building last week, and I was like, great, they're done. As I would like go to the gym or take Maverick out for walks, I would notice that the shingles weren't very, like a lot of it was just like haphazardly done. And it seems to me that the company noticed, and I was about to name the property, the apartment complex noticed, because today's Friday. On Wednesday, March 18th, at 7 or it was 8. It was 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock in the morning, these motherfuckers came back on the roof. And I was like, oh, they're just checking the work. No. From 8 until 7 p.m., all I heard, I'm not kidding, there's at one point, like 1 p.m., I heard like they went to lunch. But from 8 to 7, just every guy's wearing Timbs. We got an email. They said, hey, the project's almost done. And I went, no, they're ripping it up again. How are they going to do this in this much time, in this little time? And then today's Friday. So Thursday, they came back at 8 again. It was like 7:44. Because I was on the bike. That's right. It was 7:30 something, because I gotten home from the gym and I was on the bike. And I heard more stomping. And then there's like I don't know what this is. I'm just gonna say it's a cherry picker, but it's all in my on my patio and stuff. Guys climbing on the roof. There was that one point yesterday. I got off a meeting for work, obviously, and I get up from the desk and I'm about to go and turn the TV on so I can like watch golf or some bullshit. And I see a dude on my balcony picking up like bits of shingles and trash, because when they were doing the roof, they have nowhere else to put it. They just throw all the trash on the ground, which makes sense, fine, and they're going to come back and clean it up anyway. But the apartment complex is like, hey, if there's any trash that you want us to clean up on your on your balconies, just email us, and then the company will be by on Friday. So I assumed it was going to be today that they're going to be cleaning up. No, at like 1 or something, they were just going, like, just climbing on people's balconies. And it was just like so funny to see like a guy bent over picking up all this garbage that was on my balcony. It wasn't even that much. Really, if they never came by, I was just going to put it in my trash can. And anyway, I mentioned that is because I walked over. Maverick was next to me because the noise was so loud, and then the cat was freaking out. But Maverick was next to me, and so I get up from the computer and I go to turn on the TV. Also, I turn on the TV because it was so fucking loud. But I go to turn on the TV, and I see that guy, and I know Maverick is going to go insane. And I pull him back, and I walk just into this. There's a little hallway right here that connects the living room and the bedroom, and I just stand there, and I just look at my phone until I think that the guy is gone. But I know he would go insane. Not do anything. What's been going on? Project Hail Mary is out today. I did not go to the movies this week. I was going to go. And then that cold front happened. And then, quite frankly, I just didn't want to bike in the cold front. And the only movie that was playing was going to be playing at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. They didn't have a 6 o'clock showing. Or I think it might have been 7:20. Something strange. To where I would have been like having to bike back at like 10. That's going to happen. I'm not going to see Project Hail Mary next Tuesday. I'll be going the following Tuesday because I don't want to deal with people. I'm glad people will see this movie. I'm really glad people are going to see this movie. I want people to see this movie. And we'll talk about movies in a couple of stories, but I just don't want to deal with people. I would go on Tuesday, but I looked at the Tuesday showings for night, and remember, I'm working now, so I can't go during the day. There's an 11 o'clock showing that I'm so jealous of. and there's only 2 people in that, and I'm so jealous, and I just want, but I have things to do. I have money to make. That's much more important, mostly because I spent like $300 today alone. So I can go to a movie at night. But the Tuesday night showing at my local AMC is Dolby Atmos, or the Dolby Cinema, and it is packed at 7 p.m. I could go Wednesday, but Thursdays are a particularly heavy day in the gym, and I like to go to sleep early on a Wednesday. What else has been going on? Nothing much. I'm done with Southland. Actually, I technically have one more episode. I finished it while I was, what's today, Friday? I finished it on Tuesday, I think, while I was cycling, and then I finished I finished like 2 episodes, and then I went, all right, I have to give attention to the last one. What I try to do for shows that I watch while I am working out, whether on the treadmill, cycling, and now rowing, I tend to typically watch the first episodes without working out, so that I can go, do I really like the show? Do I want to spend time with the show? Mostly. And also give it respect. I did that with Gotham. I did it with Blind Spot. I did it with Paradise. Paradise is a show I watch when I work out. And I'm glad I did. I watched the season premiere of Paradise, of season 2, on yesterday. And I did yoga while I was doing it. It was a nice slow flow with Ross Rayburn, who's no longer at Peloton, but it was a Barbra Streisand flow that was dedicated. I dedicated it to because I saw Barbara. She was at the Oscars on Sunday, and I've been holding on to that class for like 3 years. So I said, let's do it. Let's knock it out. You might ask, how do I listen to the class and the music while I'm watching the show? Well, the reason why I'm watching these shows is because I have enough interest to watch them, but not enough interest to continue to pay attention. Oh, my goodness. And, quite frankly, for video games, I've been slacking. I've been reading a lot about Pokemon Pokopia. I don't have a Nintendo Switch 2, and I'm excited to get one. So when I can afford one, again, as a guy who spent $300 a day. The thing is, it was the 140 was for food. And then I did buy a bottle of whiskey and a bottle of tequila. But that's it. And then I bought clothes too. I needed more clothes. So I went to TJ Maxx before work. That's it. So I spent $300 this week or today. Yeah. All right, let's get to it. Here comes the first story. Let me close this email. I don't want people seeing C Plus Comedy's email. This comes from Variety. It's written by Brian Steinberg. CBS Evening News viewership drops below 4 million after Tony DeCoppo's colorful start. Here's a little breaking news. After, I think today, 6% of the CBS News... Hold on. CBS News layoffs happened. Again, CBS News layoffs. Last week or earlier this week, we saw CBS News 24/7 get some layoffs. CBS News laid off 6% of its staff and shuttered the radio division. This is... I hate to keep reiterating this, but this is what was signed up for when Paramount bought Sky, or Skydance bought Paramount. And they're going to be trying to be lean and still do the same amount of news. They're going to be doing more conservative style news, and we're just going to get a lot less and less. CBS News 24/7 is, and the radio division are the radio division's gone, but I can't see any type of bounce back from this. And I'm guessing when the Warner Brothers deal comes into fruition, when that's done, when CNN goes through its layoffs, because that's going to happen, there's going to be some sort of support for both when it comes to how the news is run at CBS or at the combined Paramount Warner Brothers Skydance. Yeah, what's the name going to be? Because Paramount Skydance is the official name that was just changed in August. Anyway, and as for CBS Evening News, this show has been in what can only be seen as turmoil, as tumult, in the past couple of months. For starters, the Friday night show is now just called Evening News, which is a way for them to say, hey, this is part of our news division, but also don't count it for the ratings. It's the same if you go like PBS NewsHour Weekend is it's the same show more or less as PBS NewsHour, but it has its own Nielsen rating system. The overall audience for CBS Evening News for the 5 days that ended March 13th stood at nearly 3.83 million, according to data from Nielsen, and at 468,000 among viewers between 25 and 54, which is the demographic that people want. What is this video that's playing? It's just beautiful. Who's that? The main competition for CBS Evening News is ABC's World News Tonight, which is hosted by David Muir, and Tom Lamas's NBC Nightly News. ABC News World Tonight is the leading program for those three broadcast network evening news shows, and it's one with an average of 8.48 million viewers, along with 1.03 million in the demo. NBC's Nightly News captured an average of 6.51 million overall in the same period and 946,000 in the demo. As I stated before, CBS News retitled the Friday broadcast of evening news, so its results are not included in the tabulations, but I can only assume that those numbers are paltry. Why isn't this show working? Why isn't CBS Evening News working? Well, initially, Tony DeCopel came out of the gates kind of haphazardly and just essentially put people off. He's had quite a year for himself, and that's not a good thing. He had the disagreement with Ta-Nehisi Coates, which I will say, as a news person, he was doing his job. He was just, even if he's on a side that you don't agree with, he was just doing his job and questioning something that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote in the book. And that's the most news that CBS Mornings has ever done since Charlie Rose was got in trouble for doing those bad things. Not like I'm defending him. And yes, I am saying Gayle King is not a news person. I'm kidding, Gayle. If we ever work together, this is a joke. One reason DeCopel was moved from a perch on CBS Mornings to become an anchor of the show is because CBS News executives worried they were falling further behind ABC's World News Tonight and NBC's NBC Nightly News with the previous hosts, the hosts who initially took over, Maurice Dubois and John Dickerson, who were doing a fine job. The problem is the problem for CBS News is that for the executives, not for the division, is that Dickerson and Dubois were doing a show that was doing enterprise stories, as is written here, and news features that it did on breaking headlines. But the issue of that is, because we have a president that is making news seemingly every day, whether it be on a Friday night at midnight, or Saturday morning, as some people might think, or on Monday at 2 p.m. There's news all the time. And then on the other hand, on the other end of that, these enterprise stories and these news features are things that are going to be not evergreen, but things that happen pretty much throughout forever, throughout life. This is how news works. And if you wanted more breaking news headlines, then you could get that by saying, hey, let's do the first 5 minutes of this 22-minute program with breaking news. Tony DeCopel sat down with Trump for an entire episode, and he had basically what essentially amounted to was patting Trump on the back for 17 minutes straight. That's not breaking news. That's not news. If you want breaking news, then put the show on CBS News 24/7. Don't. It's an evening news program. And truth be told, if people are watching that, they'd watch their local news, so they already had that breaking news. And if people are watching that, then they're more likely going to choose CNN or Fox News or Miss Now. It doesn't make sense to me. They talk more about the ratings. I believe Brian Steinberg writes here. When Norah O'Donnell left, she had an audience of 5.4 million. That was in 2024, before Maurice Dubois and John Dickerson took over. DeCopel's first 5 days from January 5th to the 9th won an average of 4.17 million, according to data from the Nielsen Company. And in the subsequent week, he even nabbed an audience of 4.6 million. The slide in audience comes after CBS News took DeCopel around the nation, and also, yes, that was a big part of his first month. He was Tony DeCopel was traveling pretty much every single day, and there's each episode was a different state. It's so fucking stupid. He also appeared on CBS Mornings throughout that run, doing stories, and that's also one of my biggest issues with how they used DeCopel in general. Also, I mean, it's part of his nature, I guess, but for when he was on CBS Mornings and they needed someone to cover a story that was like a 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, they wouldn't send a correspondent. They would send him, which didn't make sense. Why would you send one of your anchors? I understand if, oh God, where was Sarah Seidner for 3 weeks? Maybe a couple of months ago. I understand if there's, strikes happening that are going to be lasting for a long time, or if there's what was that wreck in Ohio where that train fell over and it poisoned all the water and all the air or whatever something like that. I understand if something like that happens, but you don't need to send a main anchor to a place like the wildfires in California. You don't need to send the main anchor. Send Jonathan Vigliotti, who's already there. If the Super Bowl happens and Good Morning America sends Michael Strahan to the city for the week, that makes sense. But if it's the first game of the season and it happens in London, don't send they're not going to send Michael Strahan. They're going to send a correspondent. It's ridiculous. I'm highly convinced. Again, we know how I feel about what's her name, Barry Weiss. We know how much I dislike her. Every move seems like she has nobody advising her on what should be done. And layoffs are going to happen, but CBS News has experienced layoffs more than any company, any news organization that I've seen in the past couple of years. I find it so fascinating that they're letting this happen. Where was I? What website was I? I was on some news website yesterday, and I was looking through the news, as one does, and I can't remember what it was, but I noticed how little new news that there was. Even if there's nothing happening, you should still be posting some decent amount of stories, whether they're features or evergreen stories. But it doesn't matter. Whatever. Who cares? Who gives a shit? CBS News is going downhill. All right, hey, this let's look at this next thing. It comes from the Hollywood Reporter, written by James Hibbard and Pamela McClintock. Dune 3 and Avengers Doomsday in standoff over same release date. Somebody's got to move. This is being dubbed as another Barbenheimer. If you remember, Barbie and Oppenheimer came out on the same day. And people went to see both. Oh, my God. But it did help jumpstart the theaters after, a couple of years because of the pandemic. And that was in July 2023. Now in December 2026, we're getting another version of this. What was wasn't there another version last year? I don't know. Who gives a shit? The problem is, at least with Barbie and Oppenheimer, there were two demographics that could easily support one another. Whereas for Dune 3 and Avengers Doomsday, they're fighting for the same demographic, which is men. Men like 18 to 35 or some shit like that. I don't know. Let's just say 25 to 54, the regular demographic that everybody seems to be fighting over. Here we go. 2024's Dune Part 2 skewed heavily male on its opening weekend at 68%, with many ticket buyers well over the age of 25. There you go. 2019's Avengers Endgame, conversely, saw a gender split of 60-40 male-female, with millennials and Gen Zers making up the majority of the audience. I think about this constantly as somebody who goes to the movies and who I like to see things, and I want to see movies thrive. I think that's very important. Not just because I want to make movies, but because movies are good. But people often complain about going to the movies and how much tickets cost, and then having to buy snacks. I think that if you can afford to go to one movie, if you can only afford to go to one movie, maybe think about not going to the movies. Yes, there's been times when I couldn't afford to go to a movie, and I went, and then I paid dearly for it. But if you can only afford to go to one movie, then go to the movie that will probably bring you the most joy. I hate saying that. And that's probably going to be Avengers. But you don't know what's going to happen in December 2026. If these movies come out on the same day, what day is that? They don't have the date. December 18th, that's Christmas time. And, more than likely, the majority of people are going to have time off. And 6 days after that, it's going to be Christmas Day. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, hey, you can still go to the movies. I went to the movies on Christmas Eve. I go to movies every Christmas Eve. I fucking hate it. It sucks. People think, oh, God, the trashiest people. Just the trashiest people. Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving. And not Memorial Day. Is that the same day as Tom Cruise movies come out on Memorial Day? Or is it July 4th? Either way, any holiday. Major holidays. Ugh. Major holiday. How I Met Your Mother. Okay. There's also another big issue besides the demographics thing, and it's that the premium large format screens, i.e. IMAX, are going to have to make a huge decision. Do you have Dune or do you have Avengers playing? Dune has secured IMAX screens for 3 weeks of exclusivity. Dune would generally be considered the bigger IMAX draw anyway, given director Denis Villeneuve's level of sci-fi spectacle and that the film was partially filmed using IMAX cameras. Here's something very interesting. Right before I got on, I saw that Denis Villeneuve created a new IMAX lens just for this movie, for Dune 3, which is great. That's really cool. I'm excited to see it. The last movie I saw in IMAX was Oppenheimer. And I had to go to the Mall of Georgia to get a true IMAX screen. We walked in late. We walked in like when it was like 5 minutes in. So when he was still on the train, we did not miss anything as far as I'm concerned. I got a nice aisle seat. He sat down and at the Mall of Georgia, you walk in and you're at the bottom of the screen. And you look up and it's like 7 feet, 7 stories tall, and not feet. But the most, I'm not a huge fan of seeing movies with like people again with large audiences. But the craziest thing was for this movie, and I can't replicate it because I live in an apartment, and I would love to buy either the best speakers or the best soundbar, whatever, just surround sound, anything. Was the moment that bomb went off, and they in the testing. Oh my God, I've never been shooketh like that before. Anyway, observers worry Disney is leaving money on the table by not having IMAX screens available. Remember, Warner has Dune, or I guess Paramount now has Dune, and Disney has Avengers. Here, the thing is though, yes, Disney could have IMAX screens, but I do think that Dune is a spectacle and Avengers is a lifestyle. And I say this as somebody who's not a fan of superhero movies anymore. I think, you know, I'm a person who fell off of superhero movies, with the exception of a few, but like Spider-Man, No Way Home. I had to go see that because I wanted to go see Topher Grace. Is that person not the right person? Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield hang out with Tom Holland. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I genuinely could not remember his name. But so this movie is a lifestyle, and then I assume Fantastic Four and Ant-Man 3 and the rest. You know, people generally go and watch those, and if they don't, then they'll watch it on Disney Plus. But particularly, we're interested in people going to the theaters because that's important. They want to have that water cooler talk. Everybody's being forced back in the office. So why not just have Avengers just at as many theaters as possible? Not the IMAX stuff, but at their local art house. Because I'm 99.9% sure that the Landmark Theater that just mostly plays, you know, indie movies on Ponce here in Atlanta, Georgia, it will have at least one screen for Avengers Doomsday if they want to make money, because that is the only theater in that area. It's a high trafficked area. It's right by a Trader Joe's. And you better believe the parking fucking sucks. It blows. Oh my God. That's why I try to bike up there when I can. Every time I go to that movie theater, I try to bike. That's where I saw Fleabag. And it's the last time I saw Fleabag. I just watched for the first time because I just bought all of the Indiana Jones movies. So I rewatched the first 4. And then for the first time, I watched Dial of Destiny. I did not think I was going to like it. I do like it. I don't like Phoebe Waller-Bridge. But they killed off Mutt, his son, played by Shia LaBeouf. And it's, you know what? I knew that they killed him off. I knew that years ago when that movie was being made. Not called movie shows. But it comes up so late in the movie. The movie is 2.5 hours long. It's long. There's a moment where, because I was watching it at night and I was so tired, and I had to wake up for the gym at 3:45. But there was a moment when I was watching it and it was like 8:00. I'm an old man, and it was like 8:00, and and the Mutt thing happened or something before that happened, and I had like an hour and 23 minutes left, and I went, Jesus Christ, that's all I had to say to myself. Oh, crumbs are on my tummy. I have snacks next to me. I'm going, I don't know if I could continue doing this. I did it though. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that movie. And if it's the last one, then it's a better ending than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Which, after watching that again last week, I'm gonna say this. People were mad that aliens exist. Indiana Jones said it himself in Dial of Destiny. He doesn't think magic is real. He just has seen some extraordinary things. I'm really butchering the quote. The aliens thing, it makes sense. The movie itself just was not done very well. Nothing was implemented right at all. The villain wasn't very good. The crystal skull itself, there's so much mythology still up in the air. Whereas, later Raiders of the Lost Ark, we get pretty much everything right there. And same thing for Dial of Destiny. Everything it's over explained to a point, to an issue in that movie. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's just kind of like aliens exist, and then that's it. Because if you're not paying attention for the last 20 minutes of that movie, then you're left with the idea of, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then aliens come in, and then they leave. I just rewatched Predator, and at the end of that movie, when Arnold Schwarzenegger is in, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong movie. I just rewatched. Is it Predator 2? Is that the one with Danny? I just rewatched. I did rewatch Predator, but also that second one where Predator is in the streets of LA, I believe, and then Danny Glover is inside of the spaceship, and all those other predators come out. That very much felt like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, where I would love to have had that explained a little bit more. Like, all those predators are there, and he just killed one. Like, come on, man. Anyway, all of this to say is Dune 3 and Avengers Doomsday can still work. I think people, and yes, there's going to be a male demographic, but I think people who are invested in Avengers and this whole Marvel shit, I think they're still going to be itching to see these movies. It probably won't. You know what? I'm lying. It will be bigger than with the exception of Spider-Man, because I do think people hold a very, very special place in their hearts for Spider-Man and Batman. But I do think that besides the Spider-Man movies, this will be the most successful, just like Endgame, because we saw a downfall for, because people are racist and they don't want to see a black Captain America. We saw a downfall for that. And then, I don't know. I think Black Panther 2 did pretty well. I don't know. Again, I've not seen some of these movies, but I can only assume. So I think Black Panther 2 did pretty well. But Ant-Man 3, Fantastic Four, the rest of the ones, I just think people are burned out on those, and they just kind of want to see either their favorite actor, which is right now Tom Holland, do his thing in that next Spider-Man movie, Brand New Day. I know the title. I watched the trailer. And then, or they want to see the whole story move forward. But I don't know. That's only time will tell if people are really interested in seeing Doomsday. And I think they are. I think people are interested in seeing Doomsday. But I do think Endgame probably was the better ending for this the whole series. But I think people will go see Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans return to that world. But again, these are events. Go see events. I don't even care. I'm done fighting tentpole movies and blockbusters. Go to the movies. Please, I'm begging you, go to the movies. All right, and this last bit comes from, I knew these three stories were going to hold me over. There's one point where I was like, oh no, I'm not going to have enough to talk about. I was wrong. This comes from Variety, written by Matt Donnelly. Inside Meghan and Harry's falling out with Netflix and why the royal couple is struggling in Hollywood. I'll go over this. I'll just do this really quick. This is a very long feature piece talking about why Archwell Productions, which is their production house, Harry and Meghan's production house, just after almost 6 years, 5.5 years with Netflix, nothing really panned out. They had a couple of scripted shows. No, did they have scripted shows? I don't know if that's true. They had a couple of reality shows. That's the word I was looking for. They had a couple of reality shows. They had a lot of merchandise, which is mentioned here. But the problem is, the issues are, everything they did was not very good. So imagine they had the documentary series Harry and Meghan. They had Live to Lead, which is another documentary series. They had Heart of Invictus, which was another documentary series. They had Polo, which was another documentary series. With Love, Meghan, which was a show that was hosted by Meghan. And then they have Masaka Kids, A Rhythm Within, and then there's another show called Cookie Queen, or a movie, but that's not even out yet, and that has nowhere to go. Everything that came out with this Netflix deal did not perform to the degree for which Netflix paid for all of this. And apparently, according to one Netflix insider, of the vibe on Meghan and Harry, the mood in the building is we're done. Although if you ask Netflix, or if you ask Netflix itself, they're like, oh, we have a great relationship with Harry and Meghan and blah blah blah. And if you ask Harry and Meghan's people, they will say, Harry and Meghan are very busy people, but they love the deal with Netflix and blah blah blah. Their bedside manner has ruffled feathers in meetings, and lackluster ratings for shows like With Love, Meghan have led to doubts that e-commerce is the best way for Netflix to stay in business with the couple. A Netflix insider says the ratings for With Love are, quote, on par with other lifestyle series. Are people not this? And that's a very interesting quote for me to see, because are people not going to Netflix to watch lifestyle series? No, they want to see dating. They want to see things that they know. They don't. I don't think people are really. I don't think people are really interested in lifestyle series as much as HGTV will have you believe. They kind of want the lifestyle with the messiness, if that makes sense. Everybody's denying this. A Netflix spokesperson says that it's absolutely inaccurate that Sarandos and Ted Sarandos and the co-CEO have lost their faith in the couple. I just think, it's amazing that they have Netflix was sitting on a surplus of as ever products, including tea and baking mixes totaling more than $10 million in value, and then they ended up giving those away. And an Archwell spokesperson said that giveaways from sample closets are standard practice at the studios. I think it's fascinating. Just admit that the deal did not pan out in the way that anybody thought was going to happen. They said in this piece, they said that there are moments where Meghan would be on an interview call a meeting call with people on Netflix, and then she would disappear for long stretches at a time. And there were two arguments against that given from Archwell Productions people. They'd be like, Meghan's a busy woman, and she would often have to turn off her camera and mic like everybody has done in meetings. And then another person said that she was sometimes offended by something that somebody said during a meeting, so she would just leave, which I think is the funnier answer. The deal, we don't know the true number. It's valued at between 30 million to north of 100 million, but two sources say that the number is really about 60 million. It started in September 2020, and Netflix really, really wanted this. Warner Brothers was the other dealist as well. This is what happens when you invest so much into a couple who has no proven track record at creating at making shows and movies and such. It feels like they kind of want to do what Joanna and Chip Gaines have done with their lifestyle brand Magnolia, but Magnolia is not even that successful. If anything, the most successful part about it is that they made shows for HBO Max that are now somehow airing on a cable network called Magnolia. Because remember, Magnolia, the network, came after they did the initial run of shows, like Cabin Masters or some show like that, and like Maine Cabin Masters, I think that's one of them, and Magnolia Table, which is Joanna's show. Yeah, it really feels like the whatever the Sussexes did. Sussexes. It's Harry and Meghan's last name. Whatever they're doing, it really feels like they're copying off of Chip and Joanna Gaines. Hey, look at this. We got a woman of color with a guy that she should not be with, making lifestyle shows, and they seem nice, but really they might be hiding something. No, I like the Gaines. I think they're fine. Why? I don't know. You know, it just because they're two big names and people were excited to see them get married. I don't understand what the end game for this was. Did you think that for Netflix? Did you think that people were going to be signing up for or like keeping their Netflix subscriptions just for the potential of what Harry and Meghan could bring to the table? And then for Harry and Meghan, did you think that because another successful couple, Michelle and Barack Obama, have created shows and movies that you were going to be in the same vein as them and make these wonderful Oscar-winning documentaries and make books and all this stuff? I no one knows. No one knows. There's a lot of stuff that just didn't come from this. In spring of 2021, sources say Netflix felt blindsided again with the news that Penguin Random House was indeed publishing the Harry memoir Spare and planned to do so during Netflix's rollout for Harry and Meghan. Yeah, they had to capitalize on what was happening at that time. Because if you remember, they left the UK. It was a whole thing because that family is racist against Meghan. And then the paparazzi and all that stuff. While two sources say Sarandos was riled to hear about this during a chance encounter with the Penguin executive, a Netflix insider says the co-CEO never met anyone at the publishing house regarding the book. It's a lot of he said, she said stuff. Penguin would formally announce the project in July 2021, setting a late 2022 release. Penguin Random House had no comment on the matter. Remember that the only thing I know about that book is that Harry said that he got frostbite on his penis. There's, boy, Prince Harry earned a reported $40 million from the deal. Wow, that's crazy. There's just a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, you know, I have nothing against Harry and Meghan, unlike seemingly the rest of the world. I have nothing against them. I have nothing against the royal family. I don't really give a crap about any of that stuff. There's more pressing matters. I do. You know what? I do think that Harry and his brother William should make up, be buds. It took the death of their grandmother to bring them together. You know, if in comparison to Chip and Joanna and Barack and Michelle, I think Harry and Meghan have just proven themselves to not really be a couple that should be in Hollywood. And I'm not saying that, you know, they should set their sights elsewhere, because what is this couple going to do? I don't know, or you know, maybe they'll rule England or whatever. But when it comes down to it, maybe instead of launching a production company, and also keep in mind when they left the royal family essentially, and they weren't going to be getting any money or as much money or whatever. They weren't going to have a lot of income. So they signed all these deals. They get $60 million for Archwell Productions to make Netflix shows. Harry gets $40 million to write a book with Penguin Random House, whatever. That's their income. But the things surrounding those matters just really didn't pan out, and weren't as lucrative as they should have been. So maybe instead of making those 5 or 6 shows and movies, they should have really just dipped their toes in and did one beforehand and really gotten down to the nitty gritty of what worked and what didn't. And then you expand from that point forward. There was something else I was going to say. I don't know. But you shouldn't just start with the hardest thing and then by doing 7 shows or whatever and then going and expecting them. And then also, this is no offense to Megan. I do like her. You were on Suits. You know how Hollywood works. Let's be smarter about this. Don't expect to have all of the fame and propriety that comes from Hollywood when you were on Suits. So don't make 7 shows or movies or whatever and then expect to, because I'm sure that they expected to get some type of more like a little bit loftiness of fame. I don't know. Anyway, again, I have no issues with them. There's other people I despise. All right, listen, if you like what you heard here, head to the website, cpluscomedy.com, where you can see a video version, where you can see everything I've pretty much ever done, including interviews and stuff like that. You can also go to youtube.com/cpluscomedy to see a video version of this show, as well as the other shows. LinkedIn Logs, the Jobs Podcast, and Late Night Lately, the Late Night Show, Jobs and Business Podcast. And Late Night Lately, the Late Night Show. Subscribe to those shows wherever you get your podcasts. Check out video versions of everything on youtube.com/cpluscomedy, as well as the interviews. I just talked to Craig Robinson. Go watch that. Follow us on social media at TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at @cpluscomedy. Me on those platforms at Chad Black White. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.